Hey, I've recently started trying to play a lot more games, especially games that are like coming out this year, and think about them critically as I play them. And I've been like writing some stuff for myself. This isn't what that is. This is new writings for me to sort of personally keep track of over time. Maybe I'll do one of these every month. Maybe I won't. But I'm making this. I want to keep this low effort and low stress for myself. I wrote all of this on June 1st after I had the idea last night going to bed. And I'm hoping to get it out also on June 1st and have this raw one-day turnaround, baby. These thoughts have not been like edited or revised. I just wrote out what I thought and I was like, yep, there we go. And I moved on to the next game. It's a mixture of games that I finished, games that I'm in the middle of that I probably won't finish until next month. I'll talk about them then too. If it's a game I haven't finished, I'll let you know, and I'll probably keep it a little bit brief and I'll just move on. So let's run, baby. We are starting with Loop Hero. I think Loop Hero is a super interesting concept that just doesn't do enough to make it land for me. I played through the first act in a good 2-3 hours. I found myself having a pretty decent time with its gameplay loop. Placing tiles, upgrading gear, watching the loop develop and get harder was pretty fun. I had a really good time, watching the boss meter get closer and closer to completion every run as I unlocked more stuff and I was understanding systems better. And so when I finally got to beat that boss, it was really satisfying. At the start of Act 2, however, that absolutely plummeted. Every run started feeling the exact same. The bar would get halfway, give or take. There was no consistent improvement from a run-to-run basis. The loops were taking longer, and I wasn't getting closer. Roguelikes can kind of be placed into two camps these days, where you have one type like Spelunky, where difficulty level is always pretty much the same, and whether or not you beat it or get further is entirely based on your mastery of the systems and understanding and getting better. Versus a game like Hades, where how much further you get each run is at least in some part determined by the upgrades you get in between runs. That also includes new weapons, new abilities, stuff like that. And Loop Hero really felt like neither, where I was not getting better every run, and I couldn't even fathom what getting better looked like. It seemed like I was not in a flex way, just I felt like this was the best I could be playing. I didn't understand what I was doing wrong. And the long-term upgrades, like the camps and buildings that you can build, were both pretty grindy to get, because the materials don't tell you how to get them. You have to figure that out or Google it and then grind for them. But then also once you unlocked them, it felt like it didn't do a lot for me. So I realized I was grinding runs to get a new building that would give me 2 extra potions, and I was grinding for that for 30 or 40 minutes. And I was like, man, I don't think I'm going to finish this game. I don't have it in me. I'm not having enough fun. I look back on that first act super fondly, but the complete lack of hooks or progression systems in the game just made it fall flat for me. I rate Loop Hero around a 4 out of 10. Dorfromantik is a game that I felt a lot worse about when I initially played it, and I warmed up to it after a few hours. I initially found the game pretty pointless. I felt like I was just placing down whatever pieces the randomly generated deck gave to me, and eventually I just kind of ran out. I felt kind of confused on what the point of the game was. I didn't like it, but I could tell that I was missing something. Eventually I started realizing how to tap into getting the high scores and keeping your run going as long as possible. And it made me get the game. I still don't know if I like it though. A lot of the reviews talk about the zen-like quality of it, but for me it was less of a relaxing thing and more of a just mindless clicking thing. I'd spend anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes on a run and placing down pieces and keeping up these long roads and lakes and stuff until the bottom piece of the pile eventually snuck up on me and the run ended and I felt nothing. I can't really make heads or tails of whether I like this game. The sort of flow state you get into is fine enough. The art and music is all built for it, clearly. But I didn't really feel pretty much anything while I was playing or after I finished. For me, that makes it the perfect 5 out of 10 game. Left 4 Dead 2 was a game that me and my friends picked up a few months ago on a whim. Half of us had played it a bunch when we were younger, and the other half, including me, had never touched it. I can't say I was underwhelmed by it. I really don't get excited for any piece of zombie media, but it definitely didn't live up to the hype. I don't regret playing it. I didn't have a bad time, but nothing felt particularly exciting or noteworthy. There's almost no juice on either end of the combat, either in making the guns feel good to shoot or the zombies fun to kill. The only weapon types that feel good to use are snipers and melee weapons, neither of which are particularly practical or smart to use. Melee weapons especially take away the fun of trying to keep space between you and the hordes and stop you from interacting with a lot of the special zombies altogether. There also just wasn't much tension or difficulty for us, and I know it's a personal thing, but we had to restart a few times on the first mission or two, but by missions 3 or 4, we almost never even got knocked down, much less completely game over and had to restart. I very rarely felt the hand of the infamous director. I had a lot more fun intentionally forcing difficulty by stepping on cars or triggering witches to just add some random bursts of tension when there wasn't supposed to be any. That being said, the levels are nice enough, especially the Left 4 Dead 2 portion of the maps felt very varied and like fun to play on and explore. The Left 4 Dead 1 side of the maps felt pretty samey and boring. The level design is super seamless, you kind of just flow through it. I never felt confused or lost. The most generous reading of this game would say that it's built for you to half turn your brain off and have fun shooting zombies with your friends. You know, me and my buds played this almost every night. We talked for a couple of months. Every night we just boot up one of the missions in the campaign and just play through it. That being said, it felt much more like I was just having fun being with my friends and not like I was having that much fun with the game itself. I think it's fine. It does a lot of interesting stuff, but it just really is not like fun to play for me at a baseline level. I put it at around a 6 out of 10. Qomp is a game that Polygon called an extension on the Pong extended universe, which is the funniest pitch I could give you for this game. The dev, Small Wombat, has written a bunch of stuff about the appeal of, quote, small games that can be completed in just a few hours. It makes a really good case for him here. Qomp took me about 90 minutes to beat, and it felt perfectly paced for that. By the time I was finished, I was, like, super just ready to be done. Perfectly sized meal. I felt completely satisfied. The movement's pretty basic, all things considered. You just click to go up or down. But maneuvering around that and dealing with that is still kind of a puzzle. And when it syncs up your clicks with certain obstacles in the stage, it makes it an extra bit of a challenge. The game's pretty stylized too. The ending is wild and caps off the experience perfectly. This is a short and pretty fun take on a 2D platformer. I highly recommend it. 8 out of 10 for me. Deep Rock Galactic is the first game on here that I haven't actually played most of. I haven't even gotten to try all of the mission types yet. Diving into the cave and fighting bugs in a way that requires cooperation and communication was exactly what we were looking for, it turned out. It really requires that teamwork and cooperation too, from your driller asking your engineer to place a platform for him, or your gunner telling everyone to group up under the shield during a combat section. It really encourages, incentivizes, and requires that close cooperation. This game has so many cool ideas just bursting at the seams with them. When we got to the end of the tutorial for the first time and learned that every mission ends by retracing your steps and running back to the dropship, hectically fighting through enemies and keeping your team together, it's a super great rush and got us super excited. Getting into new modes like the oil refineries, where you build your own pipes and then rail skate across them to keep them defended from the attacking bugs, is a super fun mix-up on what we'd been playing for a couple hours at that point. It was super duper exciting. This is where the fact that I haven't played a whole ton of it factors in though, because I'm a little bit afraid of it going stale on me. Already, just from the few hours we've played, the basic mining missions are starting to feel a little bit like just going through the motions in a not super exciting way. What's been really fun for this game so far is just seeing it and learning it and being so shocked by the novelty of it all and all the cool little things it's doing. But on a base level, the gameplay, there's a lot of walk into a room, everyone stop and mine the walls for a second and then move on, wash, rinse, repeat. Eventually some bugs come, and I can see that getting kind of stale. It hasn't yet, but I'm afraid it might end up that way. Here's to hoping that it doesn't get that way and it keeps introducing plenty of new content to keep me entertained. For right now, I'd place it around a 8 out of 10. Knockout City is a game I've played similarly little of, but I'm already getting the gist of it and loving it. It's got some conflicting roles in my head. On one hand, this feels super polished. Throwing the ball feels super good. Running and trick shots and the controls all feel super tight, and the game looks beautiful. On the other hand, I had a competitive game where I spawned off stage and we lost the game because of that. We had a time where we got stuck in queue for 5 minutes where we could hear a game happening in the background, and when we tried to leave it, we got banned for 5 minutes. So clearly it still needs a little more polish. On one hand, the game feels super deep with so much room for mind games and teamwork and trick shots and movement tech and all this shit. On the other hand, it feels like it might just boil down to your reaction time and if you can catch the balls or not. I can't tell if this game is good from a critical perspective or how much longevity it has or how long I'm going to want to keep playing it. But I know right now I'm enjoying it a ton and I want to get back to playing it even as I'm narrating this. So I'm going to put it around a 8 out of 10 right now with good odds of going up. Now it's fucking juice time, baby. Spiderman for PS4 is a game I am ashamed of not playing when it came out. And I'm so glad I finally did. This game just nails it across the board and gets so much out of its two basic systems. Those two main core ideas are this super deep and expressive combat system that makes fighting an absolute joy, and it's going to be the benchmark I hold all similar combat brawler style games to in the future. And the other is the joy of swinging and platforming that is so challenging and rewarding to just slowly master and maneuver around the city. It is so fun at its core. And you can integrate it with your combat, which is also super fun. And a huge part of the game's fun comes from how far it milks these two basic ideas. And it gets absolutely everything it can out of them. All these side objectives in the overworld, like the research stations that test how precise you can swing, or taskmaster challenges that see how well you've mastered stealth combat, it finds ways to give you and explore this depth if you go looking for it. The combat has so many fun little intricacies that beg you to come learn and get creative with it. Like 3/4 of the way into the game, I put together that I could uppercut an enemy, hit him once to keep him stunned, switch to my electric gadget, electrify him. Now he's stunned so that I can swing him around in a circle like an object, slam him into the ground with a big group of his other enemies to all stun them so I can just fucking go to town for a little bit. There's these like crazy combos that you can pull off and it's like super fun. And it doesn't like tell you any of it. It is very like fighting game-esque where you just have to like learn. It's like innate built systems like this. It's so fun. I enjoyed it so much. That being said, my biggest problem is like it really doesn't get enough out of that. All of the fights are like pretty similar faceless goons, and for as much fun as it is like inherently to use the combat, it is not fun to like do fights against these guys who like don't do a whole lot back to you. The fun is like finding these combos. The fun is not figuring out what combo to use against a specific enemy because it's like the most rewarding or whatever. You could get away with just mashing square and triangle and like it difficulty-wise, it is going to be the exact same. Even the boss fights, which is where I would maybe expect some of the, which is where I'd expect to get more rewarded for, you know, creativity and making use of all of the intricacies of this combat. Instead, opts to mostly be about running away for a bit, throw an object at them, and then do a quick time event, which is super lame. A lot of these boss fights like nail it on the set piece perspective, like fighting Doc Ock on the roof or fighting 2 enemies at once. Like, it's super neat in that regard, but from an actual gameplay perspective, they were like pretty boring. That can kind of be placed under my general issue with this game, which is anytime it doesn't get the most out of its two main concepts. The Miles and MJ sections are a little bit overstated, I think, but they are like less fun than the rest of the game. They aren't super common, and they kind of flesh out the world and change up the pace, so I don't mind it a ton, but it is definitely like an issue with the game. That all being said, I think this game is like super duper fun, and I'm excited to play the DLC in Miles Morales. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 for now because it does have those relatively big issues, and it has so much room to grow into, you know, the DLCs I haven't played yet, the Miles Morales game, and whatever other sequels for sure are going to get dropped for this. So these next 3 games I'm going to be a little bit shorter on because I haven't finished them. I'm at max halfway done with each of them, and I want to save the room to gush about them after I finish next month. But so far, they're all extremely, extremely good. The worst of these 3 is, surprisingly to me, Bowser's Fury. It's exactly what you've heard it is. It's a pretty short Mario experience. It's as fun as any other 3D Mario. The open world is pretty cool, actually. The levels are super bite-sized in a way that I'm not usually somebody who plays Switch in portable mode or like picks it up and puts it down constantly. But this game's short levels feel super built for that. And I know Odyssey was supposed to be built for that too, but the way that it did it by littering moons everywhere feels much less effective and much less fun than this, which is just to have really short, quick levels. It's been pretty cool so far, and I'm excited to play the other like 3 hours of it, because this is not a very long game. So far, I'd put it somewhere around an 8 out of 10, probably. Resident Evil Village is doing a lot for me. I'm someone who's a bit of a pussy, and I can't really stand horror as a genre, both like emotionally and critically. I've watched a decent amount of horror movies, and I never thought one is good, with the exception of like Hereditary and maybe Midsommar. And so as someone who like doesn't really get it, this game feels like a pitch on what horror is to me specifically. It is doing so much like cool, interesting shit that feels so tailor-made for me and my interests that I'm loving it. The like set pieces and the world design and all this stuff is super cool to like get me into it, but it's also doing the horror stuff like pretty well in a way that like usually I despise, but I'm like actually enjoying it. I'm like enjoying that experience of like being scared. This game is super duper duper fun. I love it, and I can't wait to play the other half of it. I've currently played the first 2 bosses. Specifically, the second boss I played with the doll girl. Second and third bosses are non-linear. But yeah, I'm super excited to play the other half of this game. And the last game that I'm also about halfway through is shaping up to be my game of the year so far. It Takes Two is the newest game from mastermind Joseph Fares. It feels so warm and fun in all of the like weirdest, funniest ways. Fares said that he wanted to put as many mechanics and unique set pieces as possible because repeated material makes it, quote, less special. And some fucking how, he was right. This game is throwing everything in the kitchen sink at you, and it is this constant, like, jaw-dropping delight as you just stroll through it and see all of the fun little toys he's fucking put out for you. I'm having so much fun with it. If this level of quality maintains through the second half, it is unquestionably a 10 out of 10 in the favorite game I've played in years. So that's the 10 games I've been actively playing this month. Like I said, this has been a pretty new effort by me, and it's actually just been the games I've played in the last 2 weeks, because that's when I started this all. Which means if I do this next month, there will be a lot more. As it is, I'll have hopefully finished It Takes Two, Resident Evil, and Mario, as well as played more Knockout City and Deep Rock Galactic to form more full opinions on them. I'm definitely planning on playing the new Pokemon Snap, and then hopefully also Hitman 3, Monster Hunter Rise, Valheim, Nier Replicant, Little Nightmares. I've got a lot of games on the list I'm hoping to get to. By some miracle, I can get my hands on a PS5. If I can by some miracle get my hands on a PS5, I want to play Returnal, and I really, really, really want to play Ratchet as it drops. I don't know if I'll be able to. Other than that, I don't really know what new games are coming out in June. I haven't really kept an eye on that, so I'm going to be a little bit surprised this month, I think. Like I said, this is a mostly personal thing for me to look back on in the future. But if you watched all this, I'd super appreciate it. This is pretty raw and last minute. Let me know if you have any thoughts about your games. Super genuinely, I'd be down to discuss any of the games that I've played that I talked about here. Or if you just want to dump the thoughts on games you've been playing, I think this has been a super cathartic exercise, as well as making me think about games more consciously. It's super nice. So leave any comments below if you want. Thanks for watching this. I'll hopefully see you next month.